And finally is Gavin Waite in the audience. Gavin, again, we have on several occasions invited Gavin to come and explain how operational services works at TDC and how his management at the port is in the best interests of the public. But Gavin's not here. So here we have a croc. Now, it's a croc that has been around for 5 years, so naturally by now it's horribly corrupted. Right, what we plan to do today, this evening, is, and I'm going to wear a number of hats, there's one, is we are going to, first of all, you're going to have a chair's report from me, a quick update of where we are. Then I'm going to shut up and chair the meeting, and we would like to split the meeting in two. First of all, we'd like to hear people talk about this proposal in general. Because there are so many people here, I hope you won't mind that we restrict contributions to 3 minutes. Secondly, because I suspect most people here will be opposed to the proposal to industrialise the port in general and to build a berth 4-5 to host a 3,000 tonne per hour conveyor system, which potentially delivers 6 million tonnes of something to Ramsgate. I would like to split the meeting in two, and the second half of the meeting I would like people to come up and with concrete proposals, literally, as to how we campaign against this. The committee's come up with some ideas which I will share with you closer to the time, but we do want to hear from you, and we do need every one of you to help to stop this. So, is that acceptable to the meeting as a form for the evening? And I will try and get you home so you can watch the second half of the football if you're that way inclined. Right. Chair's hat. I was actually planning to offer my resignation tonight because tomorrow is the year anniversary of the first time I did due diligence on seaborne freight. 18th of April 2018, I did what I could. I proved they had no ships, no money, no employees. They were capitalised at 50 to 60 quid, and they were a shell company. I said at the time that we shouldn't be doing business with them. TDC didn't like it. I was called all sorts of names. And then I met up with a whole bunch of new people who became the RAD committee. Members came on board, but it took a lot of my time, a lot of committee time, a lot of member time, a lot of councillor time, a lot of journalist time, a lot of prime time, and over £1 million wasted before eventually, on February the 28th, 2019, TDC, the corporate management team, finally faced up to the reality they should have faced up 5 years earlier and admitted the port was obsolete. There was no chance of a commercially viable freight ferry service ever running out of Ramsgate. So they stood the port down from inverted commas ferry readiness. I thought, brilliant. Job done. I can clock off. 4 days later, right, without an acknowledgement of the 5 years of folly they just put us through. 4 days later, without blinking, they just shrugged off the previous disaster, the previous commercial disaster, and immediately launched their next one. They put an invitation to tender to build a new, bigger berth for Brett Aggregate at the cost of 1 million, possibly 1.5 million, of our money from the capital programme, and they specified a scope, design and build tender. They said this new berth had to be bigger and longer than the berth it was replacing, and more importantly, it had to be able to host a 3,000 tonne per hour conveyor system. If you do the maths, that delivers 6 million tonnes of something to the port of Ramsgate every year, if it's running at anything like capacity. Now, that is more than the entire total for aggregates in Kent. Why would anyone want to deliver the entire total of aggregates in Kent to Ramsgate? We don't think it makes any sense. We don't get a chance to see if it makes any sense because, as always with TDC's commercial follies, it doesn't come with a business plan. It doesn't even come with anything in public. No member of the CMT is prepared to say what this conveyor will be used for. It could be waste. They say absolutely cannot ever be waste. We wouldn't do waste. Oh yeah? So why did you volunteer to London and the Thames Estuary Quango about a year ago that it'd be a very good idea if Thanet became a processing point for excess London waste, right? Excess London waste is predicted to be 1.7 million tonnes a year from 2020, and there'll be a tender available to get rid of that 1.7 million tonnes that they can't process themselves. Somebody from TDC volunteered this idea to that Quango. Somebody from TDC met the Quango to discuss the proposition. They may not be talking about waste now, but they were talking about waste a year ago, and who's to say they won't be talking about waste again? What else do we need at 3,000 tonnes an hour to be delivered to the port of Ramsgate? It is a crazy idea. It's a crazy idea that has no justification. It gets even crazier because they're saying we have to build this for Brett's Aggregate. It's in the lease, it's in the facilities agreement. RAG have challenged them to show us the clause in the lease or the facilities agreement that says we have to do this. We have read them both. We cannot see that clause. We could be very stupid. But before you spend £1.5 million, wouldn't you want some written legal advice that you're actually obligated to spend that £1.5 million for a private company? I would. This corporate management doesn't. We spent some amount of money within the last 2 years, £2.5 million approaching in total, repairing, refurbishing, improving what is known as berths 2, 3, 4 and 5. 2 and 3 were the Ro-Ro berths, 4 and 5 were the Brett's berth. That money did something. Nobody's seen an engineering report or a survey to say what it did, to say whether we got value for money. No one's seen an engineering report or survey to say that the Brett pontoons are at the end of their working life. They're only 15 years old, and last time they were built, Brett's paid for them themselves. Now, the even crazier thing about Brett Aggregates and the port is, for reasons that no one can retrospectively understand, they have a 50-year lease on the port. Their rent is guaranteed for 50 years, without review and with no breakpoints, up until 2054. That rent was fixed at £50,000 per year in 2006. If you do pro rata calculations and divide the cost of the port by 32, which is the number of acres on the port, and then multiply that by 5, Brett's should be paying somewhere around £600,000 to £700,000 a year for their share of the port, if the port is not going to lose money. So we are already, in effect, given a hidden subsidy to Brett's. To let them expand on the port on the same terms would just increase that hidden subsidy. Again, the reason why this is important is we own the port. Every pound that is lost on the port is a pound we can't spend on things we should spend. It used to be £2 million a year. Since we've given up the crazy ferry idea, the projected losses on the port by the S151 officer for the next 4 years are £1.37 million a year. At the same time, the projected savings that need to be made each year from the TDC budget are about £1 million. They start off at 912,000 and then climb a bit. So we're going to lose £1 million on the port, and we're going to cut that year by year out of TDC core services, out of the money that should be spent picking up rubbish, the money that should be spent cleaning our streets, children's playgrounds, you name it, the things you want TDC to do, they're not doing because the corporate management team prefers to do crazy commercial enterprises on the port. To add to insult to injury, this replacement berth will be paid for out of the capital programme. Sounds very good, but there's no money in the capital programme. The only way TDC can spend money in a capital programme is to borrow it or to sell community assets to raise money. So we will be selling things like toilets, like Lidos, you name it, in order to invest £1.5 million building Brett Agnett's a new berth, a bigger and better berth, a berth that is going to host a conveyor system that we don't know what it's going to do. Now, I'm a bit used to this when it comes to Madeleine Homer and so forth. I'm already being accused in the shadows of lying, of misleading, of not understanding things. Rag has been accused of lying, misleading, not understanding things. We put our research out there in public to be inspected by everyone, to be challenged by everyone. They put nothing out there in public. Absolutely nothing. They make assertions that are palpably untrue, deliberately misleading. But let's just assume for 1 second that it was the other way around. Hypothetically, we do have to pay. We do have a legal obligation to keep the port open at Brett's convenience for the next 50 years. Hypothetically, there were marine engineering reports that said a berth that we repaired only 2 years ago is completely kaput now. Let's assume all that was the case. This is still just about the worst deal that any public servant has ever seen negotiated by any other public servant. So if you're Madeleine Homer and Gavin Waite, do you want to sneak this through in private? Do you want to kiss the whip? Do you really want to collaborate with this nonsense? Or will you move heaven and earth to find any little wrinkle to get yourself out of this conundrum? Because it's in the public interest. Now, there are no guesses for which way Madeleine Homer and Gavin Waite jumped in these circumstances, because it's the way they always jump in these circumstances. No appraisal, no scrutiny, no explanation. I'm going to stop in a moment. I just want to make one last point. In our Constitution, passed unanimously by Council, on the website, underneath corporate priorities, the CMT solemnly promise and pledge to be open and transparent. To be open and transparent. Not only that, to keep residents fully informed of all plans and proposals that they may put. There is not one councillor who thinks they have approved of this invitation to tender or the commitment to spend £1.5 million for the capital programme on Brett's berth. There's not one person in Thanet who wants it to happen. That is the end of my chair's report. We need to stop this. We can stop it. We will stop it. So that's yourself. I'm now going to put on the chair the meeting hat. I would like, as I say, if it's okay with you, there are lots and lots of people I know who have views on this, general views on it. There are lots and lots of people who will be extraordinarily angry that for the last 5 years, the port has been a horrible, horrible drain on the council taxpayers of Thanet. And here is a proposal for that to continue. But what I would say is just remember, one person getting very angry and 50 people getting angry, very angry. It's a bit like singing Green Grow the Russia Zone. 50 verses of Green Grow the Russia Zone aren't 50 times as fun as one. So, despite your anger, let's keep that part of the meeting contained and get on to the more important part of the meeting, which is how we start the campaign here to stop this, to stop it in its tracks. Not only to stop them building this new berth at our expense, but to end the nonsense of Brett's on the port once and forever. They've never had an environmental impact assessment. They probably cheated the GPDR so they could avoid planning permission. And get this, the concrete batching plant has approval for the harbour, not the port. Brett's have a piece of paper that says they can put up a concrete batching plant as a permitted development on the harbour. They wrote the harbour, I didn't write the harbour. Nobody at TDC wrote the harbour. They wrote the harbour, KCC approved the harbour. They do not appear to have approval to have a concrete batching plant on the port. There is a whole bunch of things that are legal, that are environmental, that are common sense, that we could stop and attack this proposal and get rid of it and do something sensible with the port once and for all that stops the losses. So let's divide this meeting in two. I now really am going to shut up. After 2 minutes, I won't ban this, but if you could keep your remarks to 3 minutes. And who would like to speak first? Michael. I should say that he would be too modest to admit it himself. Michael is a visiting professor of concrete, a published expert on concrete, and one of the foremost experts in concrete in Britain. Michael.
Okay. Before you all kill me, I'm totally and 100% behind Steve. We've been having a lot of discussions on this, and I've been feeding Steve some facts and figures. But just to let you know, quite early on, when all of this kicked off with Brett's, and they're from my industry. I'm a concrete man, and I thought, well, okay, let's hear Brett's side of the story. So I wrote to them. I actually emailed the managing director and said, you know, this is me, Mike. I'm the president of the Institute of Concrete Technology. You know, I know what you guys do, and I think, you know, you just might be getting an unfair deal out of the people here. Why don't we meet and have a talk, and you tell me what you're doing there, and I'll try and put it in terms that the people here will understand, and maybe we can get some dialogue going as to what's happening. Did I get a reply? No. So, you know, if they're not even going to talk to one of the top men from their own industry, who might be able to explain to the people what they're doing, it's just all symptomatic of the same thing that Steve is on about. So, you know, believe me, I'm spitting feathers as to what this council are doing. They're doing it without, I mean, you know, council tax money. It just isn't right. Enough said.
Tricia, I'm sorry, RAG has a staggering fund as being competence when it comes to microphones. We failed to get any of the lapel mics or radio lights to work, so we're left with these two.
I just actually wanted to ask a couple of questions. Tricia Hartley, I'm a member of the town team and a resident on the East End. I want to ask a couple of questions. The first one is, are TDC breaking state aid rules, being as how we are still in Europe for the moment, if we are subsidising Brett by offering them reduced rent? And is there something we can do about that?
I don't know. It looks to me as though it's a subsidy. If it is a subsidy, that would break state aid rules. Obviously, we've already pointed this possibility out to TDC. TDC didn't answer us. So later on, we are going to explore some legal issues and legal avenues. That would be one thing to explore. Okay,
because the other one I was going to ask was about the environmental impact assessment. What can we do as residents if we're breathing in all this stuff and we don't know that there's been an appropriate assessment?
I think I see a hand up at the back.
Does that come in?
And I think it's Janet Davis's. And if it is, can I defer to Janet to give a far more comprehensive answer than I could?
Lovely, thank you.
You give it to me.
Sorry.
Hi. With Steve, I was one of the people who started this group in 2016. And when we fought the campaign then, I went through the environmental impact assessment, and it's a moot point whether in fact we actually needed an environmental impact assessment, because that is dependent on there being 2 Part B activities on the port. At the moment there's only 1. But it is subject to habitat regulation assessments. And as some of you will be aware, on Friday, I sent off to Natural England, and I basically said there was this plan coming forward, that we were concerned that there was, what was the situation with the habitat regulation assessments, because in 2016, Natural England told us they had no record of any HRA being done, nor had they any record of any correspondence connected with it. So I asked them, A, whether that HRA had ever been submitted, and B, whether Thanet District Council have notified them of their ultimate plans for this new berth, because it was going to carry a 3,000 tonne per hour conveyor belt, that was the aim. And if they have notified them what the ultimate plan was there, if they had notified them, had the habitat regulation assessment been done, because if they were going to put in this berth, surely they had an ultimate purpose in mind. And I also put down the bottom, which really got on Madeline Homer's goat, that this was happening under PERDA without the knowledge of local councillors, and that they were also trying to make the Thanet project, the Thanet Coastal Project Officer redundant. And I got a very angry reply almost immediately, which was fantastic, because she said, no, I should know that the reports had not been done. Result. So if we want to have a campaign like we did last time there were 80 letters to Natural England. They've never had so many letters, and it was highly effective, and that's when the aggregate washing plant was stopped. So I would suggest I put my letter up there on the website, on the Facebook page rather, and there is an error in it, because I said that Thanet District Council had awarded the general permitted development order. And in fact, they had provided the corroborating evidence to allow KCC to do it. It's a technicality. But basically, if we write to Natural England I think we all need to write and say, where are the habitat regulations assessments to do with this new berth? This site adjoins a special site of scientific interest, a Ramsar site, it's within the special protected area for Thanet, it's an SAC, the National Nature Reserve comes right up to the port. You know, it couldn't be a more protected area. They're supposed to do all this. Oh, and by the way, they're no longer washing their trucks, their cement trucks, before they leave the site. They haven't been doing that for a long time. So that stuff that you see along the West Undercliff, it probably is cement dust.
Thank you very much.